Are we live?
We are live. Thank you, Dallas.
Let me get this off here. Welcome, everyone, to our meeting tonight. Thank you for your participation. I want us to begin by everyone to review the agenda. And at this time, if we have any public comments, please raise your hand and we will address you in a few moments. First, I want to go over our previous meeting recap, something that I've been doing so we at least know where we left a month ago. We went over the Bias Crimes Annual Report with Fabio Andrade. And then the second major thing that we went over last month was the OACP OSSA implementation checklist. Those were the two main things that we did. Do we have any public comments, Jeremy?
Not at this time, Dallas. No public comment.
Is there anyone have any objections to the agenda? Is the agenda fine? Okay. Okay, we're going to go next with let's see here. I'm going to introduce someone to our commission. Her name is, she's the policy sergeant. Her name is Julie Smith, and I'm going to give her opportunity to share a little bit about herself and what she'll be doing with us. Sergeant Smith.
Good evening, everyone. As Dallas introduced me, my name is Julie Smith. I am sergeant here at the Eugene Police Department. I am newly in the policy analyst position. I've been with the department for 25 years. I grew up locally in the community. I grew up in Oak Ridge, and then I left to attend the University of Oregon, and I've lived in Eugene, Springfield area, Pleasant Hill area all my life, and currently just moved to Junction City, but and I recently retired from the department, but have contracted back to get to and excited to do this position as a policy analyst and work with the police commission. So happy to be here. Glad to meet everyone.
Lucky to have you.
Thank you very much. We are, and I got an opportunity to meet her, I believe, was that sometime last week or the previous week? And she brings a lot to the table, and I look forward to working with her as well. Next, we're going to get into liaison reports. Is Dr. Garcia available?
I am not seeing Dr. Garcia.
Okay. All right. Next, Counselor Ye. Any liaison report?
So I think the only thing I can report is that we had a work session on the Community Safety Initiative funding. So it was kind of high level, no specifics, but if people want to go back and watch that, I think it might be interesting. There was a lot of talk about officer wellness and concerns about that and not having support. And there was also some discussion about different alternative responses and some of what that might look like. There was kind of a broad, and the chief might even talk about it tonight, but I would, if you're interested, please go back and watch it. And I can always answer questions if someone has it, if I have the answer, or I can bring back answers to questions if people have them that I can't answer today.
Thank you very much for your report. Next, we'll be going into commissioner comments. I will begin with Vice Chair Severio.
Thank you. So I had reported earlier that my wife had been in the hospital for a few days. She just got back. I'm going to be taking care of things at home here, so I'm going to have to jump off after very shortly. Know that I am committed to be here, despite whatever others might say on this committee, and that unless it's something that's an emergency or something important, which I know you all will excuse, I can expect the same from all the rest of you. So my apologies for having to jump off, but it's a commitment that I have to family, and I expect the same thing from all of you as well.
Thank you. Commissioner V.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to welcome Sgt Julie Smith to our table.
Thank you. Commissioner Shivers.
Thank you, Dallas. And yeah, I'm super happy everybody's here and that I am back with the team. Also super happy to see Sgt Smith joining us. She helped me get my feet under me and figure out what was going on in our city with a ride along and a walk along when I first became chair. So yeah, really excited and happy.
Thank you. Commissioner Dominguez.
Okay, so I did these things today. So today I emailed Beatrice, and hopefully we'll be talking about Hispanic outreach. So hopefully something will come of that. And then also I sent you my report that I said that I was going to send you like a month or two ago. I sent it today, and I think it's very thorough and based off of the interviews that I had done during 2 sweeps. And also just a general interview of one of the officers. And I don't remember if he said whether or not I could say his name. So I just kind of kept that private. So just, you know, you can talk to me if you're an officer, and I will keep your name private, and you can just tell me things, and then I'll just like write a report. And that was really interesting. I have some recommendations in there, which also pertain to kind of like the officer health and that kind of thing. And also, this past month, I was working on, we talked about this before, officer, like the officer's ID. So I think it's called the DPSST number, and having that be an identification for officers. So that's pretty exciting. And then, what was the other thing? I think there was something else, but maybe I'll just comment it at the end. So.
No problem. And some of those things you can talk about when you talk about your outreach. So some of the things you just brought up are things you probably could also bring up in the outreach as well. So you'll have plenty of time to address that as well.
Thanks.
Commissioner Robertson.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see everyone here. Sorry, my camera's off. I'm currently in law school, and I'm actually at the U of O right now, and there's a lot going on. So I'm kind of tucked away, but I'm hoping to turn on my camera soon. Welcome, Sgt Smith. I'm happy to get to know you.
Thank you. Commissioner Winrock.
Hey everyone, it's great to see you. Chantel, my heart goes out to you. I'm at the Lundquist School of Business in Portland. So my camera also may be off at times, and I apologize if it's hard to hear me with the mask. Just wanted to echo the warm welcomes to Sgt Smith. Sgt Smith, you really helped me understand how the subtle distinctions in policy for the downtown beat can have huge implications for officers across the board. And so, yeah, I'm just really humbled that you're here and really excited to learn with you and work with you through Jeremy. So just wanted to say how exciting it is to see your face again, and really glad that Chief roped you in from retirement, so you have only yourself to blame. And I also wanted to say thanks for the nudge, Dallas, to do more community outreach through the Whitaker Community Council, which is a nonprofit organization that I serve on the board of, which also serves as the Whitaker's Neighborhood Association. We had representatives from Showing Up for Racial Justice, also known as SURGE. It's the Springfield Eugene chapter, and they advocated for an endorsement of a letter which supports the recommendations from the ad hoc committee on police policy. So I wanted to say we've heard from community members, really excited for the work of council, the ongoing work of council, and the partnership between the chief and the council and the municipal judge and the team that's working with the city manager on the recommendations from the ad hoc committee for police policy, and wanted to reiterate that really appreciate the gentle nudge to continue to do community outreach. And so as we continue to listen and learn, I'll keep you all appraised, but certainly what I'm hearing from folks is a high amount of enthusiasm for the recommendations and wanting to see some of those implemented sooner rather than later, or at least being able to consume the progress that has been made in the ongoing work around the recommendations implementation.
Thank you. Thank you. Amanda, you're next.
Hello, can I give an update for Human Rights Commission too, a liaison?
Yes.
Update. Alrighty, so let's see, in the last Human Rights Commission meeting, we finalized our work plan. So that'll go to City Council pretty soon here. And then we also voted to endorse a resolution from the Democratic Party around green buildings in Eugene. And that'll go to City Council. And then we also sent a memo with information about the impact of declaring homelessness a protected status that was put together by Legal Aid. So those are all in our last packet if you're interested in checking them out. And then we finalized our liaison positions. So this will be my last police commission meeting. So I have turned the liaison position over to Ibrahim Koulibaly. And in going through all of our liaison positions, I discovered that our liaison to the Civilian Review Board has been vacant for the last couple of years. So I'm going to do that instead. And then otherwise, I've been able to participate on 2 hiring committees with EPV and then 1 more in November. And that's been wonderful. It's been great to be a part of that. And then let's see, great to see Sgt Smith. Great to see that you're back. I really liked working with you around the Sharps boxes downtown. And then otherwise, I have a new puppy, so I'm gonna have to turn my camera off sometimes and get him out of trouble. He was trying to destroy my house. So, all right, thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're all on the same page. Counselor Zelenka has an approved absence tonight, and Commissioner Davis will be on it around 6:30. And that also is approved. So just so you know, if you're looking out for them. Where we're going to be going to next is our civil disturbances. And you guys can turn to that. That's on page 1. What we're going to be going over. I'm gonna read the issue statement. This agenda item is to conduct a review of the Civil Disturbance Policy 317 that includes new language in response to House Bill 3355. And then how did we get to here? I'm gonna skip some of the things, but I'm gonna let you know. Commissioner Dominguez requested that an officer's DPSST number be added in policy to be visible on the officer's uniform. The response to that is on Civil Disturbance Policy 317.6, Section 3. Officers involved in crowd control activity should wear appropriate protective equipment, which is clearly labeled with police and the unique identifier DPSST number on the back of the uniform. The officer's first initial and last name should be on the front of the uniform, as well as the department patches affixed on both shoulders of the uniform. If wearing a tactical helmet, the officer's unique identifier, DPSST number, should be affixed to the back of the helmet. At no time shall an officer intentionally obscure any uniform labels or markings. And if we go to 317.63, officers involved in crowd control activity should wear appropriate protective equipment, which is clearly labeled. The back of the uniform shall be labeled police and display a unique identifier. The unique Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, DPSST number assigned to each sworn employee will be displayed on the back of the uniform. The officer's first initial and last name should be on the front of the uniform, as well as department patches affixed on both shoulders of the uniform. If wearing a tactical helmet, the officer's unique identifier, DPSST number, should be affixed to the back of the helmet. At no time shall an officer intentionally obscure any identifiable uniform labels or markings. So we have the language that we were looking for. And my question is anyone here want to entertain a motion that we are okay with 317 with the current changes?
Dallas, Commissioner Shivers has his hand raised.
Commissioner Shivers, would you like to make a motion to go with 317 with the current changes?
Yeah, I realize this is the second time we've brought it back. I've noticed obviously more things that I want to think about, but for now, yes, I'm happy to make that motion to accept as changed.
And I'm going to take that, but I just want to remind everyone that this was reviewed already in January. Basically, what we're doing is we're going through 317 that's already been reviewed by us in January, and what we're adding to this is what Commissioner Dominguez has asked us to add to this. So if we've already reviewed it and everyone's okay with what Commissioner Dominguez has added to this, that's what you're making the motion for. So is that a motion to?
Yes, precisely. I was acknowledging the same thing and saying, despite the fact that there's still tweaks that I want to make, we've already looked at it and I'd like to make the motion to accept it as it is.
And do we have a second? Okay, we have Commissioner Shivers did the motion and Commissioner Winrock seconded. Thank you very much. Next, we have another policy that we'll be reviewing. This policy is the social media policy, and this policy is a draft. So this is still work in motion that we happen to have. So basically, I just want to kind of have our eyes on it. And if we have any questions, we have joining us Melinda McLaughlin. Melinda, can you take a moment and tell us a little bit about what you do? And then we can kind of go over this policy. Melinda?
Absolutely. I was before the commission when we did our communications policy, our news media policy, and got to meet some folks then. And now there are some new members. And if you ever do want to sit down and look at what we're doing, I would be happy to facilitate that. I am the Public Information Director, and our office runs with two people. And so that includes John Hankmeyer. And his job mainly focuses on operating our EPD digital communications. So what that does is that it brings into focus our ability to create and generate video, including for news media. We've had our stuff used by CNN, national, and as well as local when people can't make our news conferences. Also, it helps us get more information out. So if you have news media that's really busy and the newsrooms have been cut and are a lot smaller than they used to be, a lot of times they won't have time to send people to do stories. And so if we generate those stories and send them in a format that media can take advantage of, then we get more of the information out. So as part of what we do, we also operate social media. And right now we're on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram. We've got LinkedIn, we've got YouTube. We also have TikTok. And the reason for that is to take a look at various audiences that would like to hear messages about Eugene Police and information, and look at the audiences and look at the usages of them, and then make sure that we're reaching them and communicating in the appropriate manner. And so social media gets operated out of the office, and we do the public records retention on that And we observe the laws that go around with operating social media for a government. Operating social media for government's a little bit different than, like, say, when I operate my own. I have to observe a lot of different rules, like the First Amendment rights for people, and I have to make sure that we're responding to things in a timely manner. And also posting information. A lot of times we'll find out that people are wondering what's going on in the community, and they don't necessarily all clue into the news anymore, and they're looking on Facebook for that. And so this provides that platform for them to find information, and different groups of people use different social media. So we've expanded our scope a little bit to TikTok and Instagram. And one of the uses for that is probably going to become recruiting, because there are a lot more younger people on those platforms. And so right now we're looking at building up the audiences for those. We haven't used them as much as we've used our Facebook and Twitter, but we're starting to expand that use. Also, we do news media requests every day. We do all of the public records requests for media. And so that's usually about 45 to 50 a year. They tend to be more complex. We also help run some of the events and do the design and outreach for that. We deploy social media, news, and all sorts of different things. And we produce the annual report, and we just respond to public questions on a daily basis. So that's it in a nutshell.
I have a question. So this policy 220, just so we're crystal clear, it does not address a police person's personal use.
No, it mainly is for the corporate use of social media, which has to do a lot more with branding, with making sure that we're consistent across platforms, that we're obeying the laws that go along with operating that, like the public records retention. And it only has to do with the communications outreach of the department. The personal use would be more for some, probably for HR and or the city attorneys to address, because that starts to go into a person's freedom of speech rights. And so that's not really part of our department as much, or my office as much as it would be, I think, for HR or another type of unit to handle.
Thank you. Commissioner Shivers?
Yeah, so I, just to start digging into this, I was wondering if we have the ability on all of these platforms to have an auto reply feature of, like, if this is an emergency, call 911, or if the, I know the call center has a text service now, if either of those things were included, if there was an auto reply message, or how that goes.
For the direct messages on Facebook, we do have an auto reply, and sometimes people don't like that. We tell them that we're not monitoring social media 24/7, and we have it clearly posted that they should not be reporting crimes in progress on that. Nevertheless, sometimes people do, and so we try to route those appropriately and remind people of either calling the non-emergency line or calling 911. Texting is another good example that we probably should include. But we do that on Facebook. I'd have to take a look at what we're doing on Instagram, but I think normally we have those bounces and auto replies.
Excellent. I had assumed. I have more questions, but I want to give other people a chance to.
Okay, it looks like you can hit your next question.
Cool. The second question I had was, you mentioned that the accounts won't use copywritten material, but I also know that memes are an incredibly effective advertising tool, particularly with younger folks. How does copyright impact, meme usage?
I haven't really run into any problems with meme usage. If we ran into a problem, we'd pull it. We did run into a problem one time with a video we took that where they did a thriller downtown, and it was a really cool thing. They had the police doing Thriller at a kind of a crowd dance, flash mob, and it was super cool. And we put it to Thriller. We were playing it in the background. Well, that got pulled by Facebook, and we realized that we had infringed on somebody's royalties there. And so then you just need to take the audio out. And so we run across those things, and when we do, we'll address them.
The last question,
Okay, well, I'm going to go to, and I'll get right back to you, Commissioner Schreiber. Commissioner V.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am wondering for 220.2 section 6, where it says when a social media site or page has become inactive, etc. What constitute one of those social media or page to be inactive? What would be considered inactive to you?
So I think you're pointing out something good that may need to be added to this, and that's to define that. I think that's a really good observation. We did pull the crime prevention one. We had a discussion with them about how often they were posting, and they were finding it to be a lot of work, and they didn't have the viewership that they probably should for that much work they're putting in. And you can get more from just posting on the main site, and that's the reason for keeping most of our social media just to the Eugene Police and putting everything on it, because it shows the diversity of our department, and it also puts everything in one place. However, they were not getting very much activity, and we looked at it and said, maybe we should pull this. And it wouldn't have been a best practice to do this as a separate social media anyway, but it got done a long time ago and we kept it going. And then it became obvious that we should just stop doing it. And we do have, John, I have as one of his goals this year is to go through all the social media and check for our metrics and see how the usage is on all of them and report back. And if we do find any that are not getting used, not being posted, and that are just hanging out there, then we might pull it.
Yeah, so thank you. But I think I really agree with you that we need to have some kind of definition as far as what constitutes as inactive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So thank you.
You're very good.
And that was a great question, Commissioner. Next was Commissioner Shivers.
V's question got the answer to my question too.
Okay, Commissioner Winrock.
Thank you so much for walking us through this, Melinda. Really exciting to be looking at the policy and draft. And I'm also simpatico with what you're going through. I used to work in the city manager's office of a small city in California. And what we did is we ran programs to improve young people's chances of being college and career bound, starting at preschool. So we worked with families and folks all the way from pre-K through community college. And the one thing that really struck me about social media is you don't always hear what you want to hear, right? Those metrics can be great, but they also can kind of be misleading too. And so I wanted to kind of ask you two questions. One is kind of what types of analytics are you looking for? Are you doing any kind of social media sentiment analysis? We use a tool called zencity.io. They're a Tel Aviv, you're nodding your head, so you've probably heard of it before, doing social media sentiment analysis, seeing how positively or negatively things are trending. And you can see these really interesting analytics around sentiment. So just wondering how you're capturing some of these data. And then also too, in the policy itself around it's 220.4 subsection A, community outreach and engagement. I'm wondering too, in what ways could we add some language there for policy input? I think that a lot of us and even some of our commissioners, family things come up, work conflicts happen, and people want to be able to have more dynamic interactions with policy conversations that aren't necessarily bound to public hearings. And I think that social media can be a vehicle for that. They're just as imperfect as Zoom meetings, right? They have their own set of constraints. Some voices are the ones that are resourced enough and they're already heard pretty well. So there's a definite danger of them becoming an echo chamber. But I wanted to touch on those two things. What kind of thinking and ways have y'all approached analytics and kind of sentiment analysis? And then two, have you explored any thoughts for kind of including some language in the community outreach and engagement section around contributing to policy conversations specifically?
Yes, as far as contributing to policy conversations, we haven't delved into that yet. So it might be helpful to hear more from you about what you've done in the past and get some ideas of where to look for tools and what would be the best ones for something like that, and to see what all the ins and outs of it would be before we start. The first question that you had about our analytics, what we've usually looked at in the past is pretty shallow, I would say. We haven't taken a deep dive into what everything means. I would say that we do that more often when we've done advertising, and then we'll look and see how many people we got for the money we spent. And one thing I can say is that once they changed algorithms and we're feeding things differently, we used to pay the same amount of money and get 30,000 people that we're now only getting 300. And so it really does show you what is happening out there. Also, we do look on the back end sometimes to see, what the comments are, and also how the usage has been. And they have like the back end of Facebook that you can go in and look at the analytics. I wouldn't say that we look at it a whole lot. When you take into account the scope of what we're trying to do in our department, we don't have a huge amount of time to devote to social media. And I would probably say we have probably too much social media on our plate, but we do need to be there, and we need to have something going on. So we do the best that we can with it and try and be effective. We could probably dive a little bit more this year into doing some analytics, and I think we should on all of the platforms to see how they're doing. We probably don't have to do a lot with TikTok yet because we've only got a few videos up, and we're still defining what our voice is going to be on that and what our style will be. But as far as the Instagram and Facebook, that would be easy to capture, and as well as the Twitter. But we don't have a tool to do it.
Gotcha. Yeah, thanks for that, Melinda. And for the aggregating kind of policy sentiment, I wasn't thinking of anything audacious or high tech, but maybe that could be a passive way that the police commission captures community outreach and engagement, and maybe adding a single bullet saying aggregating community sentiment on police policy. So you could bring to the chair, hey chair, or Jeremy rather, and Jeremy would bring it to the chair and say, hey, this month we saw an explosion of likes around the fact that the police commission is looking at the social media policy, right? So that would be one way of us kind of passively subsuming information that's out there without y'all needing to kind of actively create channels for it. So there might be some way. It's been a long time since I've looked at the back-end tools for social media, so please forgive me. But just a way to passively capture data and kind of export those reports and then send them off to Jeremy, just so that we have another way of kind of listening to what the community's saying about police policy specifically. But thanks for your feedback. Really interested to seeing how this develops.
And I think that's a good idea. And also maybe we could ask certain questions from time to time. If there's a question you want asked out there, we could ask and then provide Jeremy with the responses that come in, both the responses and the direct messages that we get. That might be an interesting way to go. And also the shares, what the analytics were for the page. Yeah, it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I absolutely love the idea. Thank you, Dallas. I absolutely love the idea of, at the very least, broadcasting when we're meeting on a platform that has that many, that many engagements and that broad of a reach. I also want to clarify this policy is very much about the online space that EPD assembles for itself. I imagine there's a second component of this, which is like the investigatory side of social media that maybe doesn't even deserve a specific policy of its own, because it's like practices and procedures. But how do these two sort of worlds interact?
Yes, when I get a direct message from somebody reporting a crime, then I send that to the appropriate unit sergeant. And sometimes we'll get things that kind of pique our concern, and we'll send that to the group. If we're flagged with anything, whether direct message or Facebook, then we make sure and route it. And anything that goes on in investigations, they just work there. There have been times they've asked us to post things. So we will post things for investigations, like to find a suspect or to get tips in a case. And we do that. And we usually will report back to them the responses that we got that were direct messages that they don't see on the back end. And then they can go look at the page themselves for the other tips that came in. But sometimes we'll go ahead and capture that for them as well.
Sorry, I meant specifically social media investigating people's online profiles and stuff.
Oh yeah, that would be more like a special investigation. It might be a background investigator when we hire people. It might be a like a special investigations unit doing online sexual I forget, corruption of a child. That could be this sort of case that they're using social media for. And they also might be working social media just to see relationships between people. And that's something separate from what I do. And so I haven't really delved in anything of that nature. Investigations did have a few different tries at different pages to help get suspect information, but they haven't really been active on it.
Okay, thank you very much, Melinda. The one thing that I suggest, just from based off of what I'm hearing, I would like to see if you, Commissioner Winrock, could find either opportunity either by phone or come down here to the station. And why don't y'all connect and kind of go over that, some of the things y'all were talking about, because I believe you bring something to the table when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Next on our, and I actually skipped over, but those things happen from time to time. We have the Chief's report. Chief Skinner, now you had your hand up. Were you saying, hey, Dallas, it's time for me to do my report, or did you have a question for Melinda?
First of all, I'm used to getting skipped over, so I don't take it personal,
Okay.
Chair Boggs. Second of all, I would be remiss if I didn't lead with Happy Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Real men do, in fact, wear pink. I'm hoping you're liking the look of the cars, and I'm not sure if you've seen our whole fleet of motorcycles, but they're looking pretty sharp these days with the pink and black, and EPD is really happy to be engaged in this particular campaign. It wasn't too awfully long ago that one of our own, we were lined up in cancer treatment for a last day of chemo for one of our own employees, and she is a survivor. And so we're really happy to be a part of that. So yeah, happy breast cancer awareness. It's touched us all in different aspects of our personal and professional lives. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a report. I'm going to apologize for the casual nature of my appearance. I'm in Minneapolis, St. Paul right now, getting ready to see if my 14-year-old can play hockey with those kids that skate in Minnesota full time. So what you see behind me is the backdrop of a lobby of a hotel. And I wanted to just spend some time with you tonight so that we could share a little bit of information with you. First and foremost, after the Julie Smith Love Fest, I've determined that I'm the smartest chief in the area by bringing her back. So we're really happy to have her, and she's done a great job, and she's just so organized. I think in the early stages, my analysis would be you're gonna get a ton done with Julie overseeing some stuff. She is overseeing our legislative mandates, which your first policy, civil disturbance, is the genesis of the change that we needed to make, that Bonnie was able to give us some input on, is a legislative mandate that came out of this last long session. And so we're happy that we're kind of landing our plane on that. There'll be others that she's looking at. She's also going through accreditation right now. That's another legislative mandate that all agencies over 30,000 that serve over a jurisdiction over 30,000 people have to be accredited through an accrediting body, whether that's Oregon Accreditation Alliance or CALIA, which is a accreditation alliance out of California. And we have been accredited all these years, and we're up for reaccreditation. And so she's getting that prepared for end of the year to be reaccredited, and we'll receive that award in the springtime at the Oregon Association Chiefs of Police Conference. And so she's doing that. She's doing the legislative stuff, and she's doing all of the other policy stuff that's happening. So she's a busy person. And so I really appreciate the work she's doing and that important work that she's doing. A couple of just updates for you guys, just so that you can kind of see what's kind of in my front view window is most recently, as Councilor Ye pointed out, we are deeply involved in the CSI discussions around not only what we've already invested, but what might future investments look like. I've done a couple of different presentations, most recently this last week, around some high-level ideas around how we can invest some money. And as she artfully articulated it, the two themes that kind of came out, and they weren't everything we talked about, but a couple of themes that came out of that from council discussion is around officer wellness and employee wellness, and understanding that during this really tough time of it being in this profession, and really struggling with getting the numbers of staff that we need to do the job, that people are working overtime like they've never worked before. They're exhausted, they're tired, and they're still trying to raise families and go to school and do all the things that they're doing. And we recognize that, you know, our healthy officers are the ones that make the great decisions out on the road. And we want to be really, really careful about making sure that we're not putting people out in the field that are struggling. And so we want to have a focus on wellness, and that can look like a couple of different things and a variety of different programs and things that we're entertaining. But that was one of the discussions that we had that night. The other one was the alternate response, or the concept around, hey, you know, does a police officer need to go to everything that we get called on? And the answer is no. They don't need to go to everything we're called on. What they need to go to are the ones where we feel like they're dangerous, or that there's a safety component that they need to be there to be able to handle and de-escalate and or respond to appropriately. But thinking about the concept of building a more robust response to some of these other calls for service that we get. I may have mentioned this last time we chatted, but I think it's important to bring up. Our recent analytics identify as many as 163 calls on average, 163 calls a day that go unanswered. And those are real people that are calling, mostly non-emergency dispatch with some issues. Some of them are actually 911 calls with issues, people that are victims of crime or scared or intimidated. And unfortunately, we can't get to everything. We, on average, are answering or taking, and as far as intake, and this is just an average, so you can imagine what the busy days are look like, is right around 440 to 450 calls for service a day. And it's just, we just can't keep up. It's just a supply and demand conversation. We've just got a ton of demand and not enough supply. So we either need to increase our supply, or we need to do stuff to reduce the demand. And there's a few strategies on both sides of that we need to pay attention to bring us kind of more in the middle. That's a little bit more manageable. And so we talked a lot about that with CSI. Department is doing well under the circumstance. I'm down about 17 police officer positions and some professional staff positions. And so, like I said earlier, every single shift we have overtime that is going to be needed to make ends meet. We are finishing up kind of our homestand with some football games. That's going well. I know that Bonnie was interested in having some dialogue around whether or not that should be within our purview, knowing that we're struggling with overtime. And unfortunately, each year we never know where we're going to be when we sign that contract. And over the last 6-8 months, we've had just a lot of people leave the organization for a variety of reasons. And we see that nationwide. And we see that certainly in Oregon, where people are leaving the profession, either to go be a police officer in another state, or they're leaving the profession altogether, or they're retiring because they're able to retire, and they're going ahead and retiring on time. Otherwise, they would often stick around. But what we're also talking about is, as we finish this football season and we move into the next year and have a conversation about what next football fall looks like, is trying to leverage private security contracts and less actual officer engagement. And so we'll be thinking about that. It's not time to do that yet, but we'll be thinking about that when it's the time, knowing that the city streets are ones that we have to take care of, and we can't abdicate that to anybody else. That's our responsibility. But certainly the on-campus stuff, we can maybe more robustly respond to with private security and free up some of those overtime hours so that we don't have to fill those as much. So we're working on hiring. We've got 4, was 5. We lost a lateral. She, for personal reasons, decided to pull out, but I've got my recruiting person working really, really hard on this lateral to give maybe a hiring date down further into the year after some personal things wrap up for her. She's from North Carolina and she's a good candidate and I don't want to lose her. But we have 4 starting on November 2nd. We have 6 in background right now from the last process. And then we're opening another process either tomorrow or Monday. I don't remember which day it is, but we're opening another process and then another one in November. So we're really, really trying to get on this pace to hire to try and get these positions filled. It's been a real challenge to get candidates and a real challenge to get good candidates. And again, everybody's feeling that pain. It's not just Eugene Police Department. So we are excited about the CSI, and what that brings is an opportunity to maybe do some things a little bit differently around recruiting. Recruit in some different ways in some different areas and some different styles and techniques on how we recruit will be really, really important for us. And to include talking about an employee referral program that actually incentivizes our employees to actually do some of the recruiting for us, because we found that the stories our employees tell about their employer are sometimes the most impactful ways that we can get people excited about being a part of the EPD family. So we're trying to be creative around all that stuff, and it's going well, and we're busy and we're working hard and we're tired and, just like everybody is, but such a committed and dedicated group of individuals that show up every single day and do the very best job they can. And sometimes mostly we get it right, and sometimes we get it wrong. And when we get it wrong, we've got great mechanisms to hold ourselves accountable, and we go through that process. But I'm just really, really proud of this organization and proud of the work the commission does to help us be as good an organization as we are.
Thank you for your report, Chief. Before I go to the next presentation, I want to welcome Commissioner Davis. And if you have any comments, I'm going to give you an opportunity right now to say what you'd like to say.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say that it's good to see everyone, and I apologize that I'm running late. And I'm looking forward to some good conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I had some questions, okay. Dallas, if I could ask him before.
You have a question, please? Okay.
Yeah, for Chief.
Yeah.
So we mentioned leveraging contracts with private security in non-public areas. As you all know, you've been here as I've asked the auditor's office every year to start taking complaints and tracking them when they come in about private security and other agencies in the area. I am extremely wary about diversifying our community safety by relying on private companies, especially before we have a robust accountability metric for them. I'm hoping, Chief, that you will join us, or at least join me in asking if that's something that can be done, and what your thoughts are on the availability to do that.
Anytime you use private security, there's a little bit of a risk there. There's no question about that, because they don't have to follow some of the same, let me put it this way. If you're doing your job right, your contract with a private security company that has a philosophy that's closely in alignment with the organization they're serving, first and foremost. So it's on us to make sure that we're not just hiring just anybody because we need bodies, but we're actually finding a security company that is a just, reliable, and accountable security company. So that's our responsibility. The auditor's office purview is set by ordinance, and by ordinance, they have no authority over anybody other than the Eugene Police Department. I mean, the auditor's office doesn't even have authority over the Eugene Springfield Fire Department. So there's not going to be a mechanism by which they are going to do any data collection or intake for anybody other than City of Eugene police employees, unless we have an ordinance change. And then even if we have that ordinance change, that probably would mean that those contracts would have to, those contractors would have to agree to be subject to the auditor's purview and investigation. But then what's the accountability mechanism for holding them accountable in the event that they, violate? And then what are they violating? Whose policies are they violating? Largely what we deal with is policy violations that we have established within the police department. Very few times are we doing criminal investigations on our own people where they violate state statute. The lion's share of everything we do is a policy violation internally. And so there's a lot of hoops to jump through, and it's messy, Sean, to say the least, when it comes to trying to bring private entities under kind of our unique public auditor system.
For clarity, all I asked of the auditor was that they track when complaints came in about who they were coming in about, not do any of the messy background stuff.
Oh, well, then if that's the case, then, they get complaints all the time where people think that they were Eugene police officers that did that. And we find out that it was state police or the county, or, interestingly enough, even though you guys know on this call, when you look out amongst police officers, you know exactly who the Eugene police officer is, because you're used to seeing that. When people come to visit our town and they see a badge in a car and something like that, if they're in Eugene, they just assume they're Eugene. They could have a brown uniform on or a green uniform on, they don't know. And so we do get some of those. So to your point, yeah, I think there's probably some of those complaints that do come in where people had concerns about the way they were treated by somebody that they found, somebody that was in a position of authority. They maybe thought it was Eugene police, and we found out that it wasn't. So we could probably do some data mining on that.
Yeah, and Eugene gets blamed, but can't do anything about it. It's unfair all around.
Right. Now, fair enough. Yeah.
Commissioner Dominguez. You're on mute.
Yes. Just out of curiosity, is there the security people? Well, this wasn't my original question, by the way. But is there a fear that they have guns, or like these private security people?
First of all, if we're talking specifically about kind of the stuff that's happening with the game, since that's that time of year, this is all University of Oregon. This is not the city of Eugene that's contracting with these folks. The event is happening on University of Oregon property, and so they do all of the contracting with security. And my understanding is all the private security they contract with are unarmed security.
Okay. Oh, that's good to hear. My other question, and I might come back to it, but my other question is actually, how is the academy going? The Citizens Academy? Is there an update on that by chance?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know if it's started yet.
Oh, okay.
I think I'll have to, yeah, I'll double check on that, Bonnie, because that is a great question. I know we were super excited about doing it, and we may be in the beginning stages of recruiting and filling that class. But let me check on that, and I'll get back to you.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Was that your second question?
Yeah, and I guess I could just say thank you for following up on the whole U of O and the police officer, the stress that they're going through. So thanks for doing that, Chief. Appreciate it.
Does anyone else have any questions for Chief Skinner? Okay, we're going to move on, and the next subject is an important subject. It deals with gender inclusive and diverse language policy review. I asked Commissioner Winrock to kind of take point on this. Commissioner Winrock brought this to the table, and I've always been that type of person. If something is important to someone, especially in a commission like this, I relinquish that to the person who brought it to do the proper research, to find out what should we be doing, and embrace it. It's yours. So without saying any more about this, Commissioner Winrock, can you begin your presentation?
Certainly can. Thanks, Chair. Jeremy, do I have the capacity to share my screen?
You should. Please let me know if you're not seeing that.
Okay. And let me know if this doesn't work.
It's working.
Can you all see it? It says the problem specifically? Okay. All right, so really excited to talk with y'all tonight. I'm gonna take about 5 minutes, and I wanted to start with a big idea. that changing police policy to include gender inclusive and diverse language can reduce implicit bias. So although he's not here, one of our fellow commissioners, Councilmember Zelenka, is always refraining, what problem are we trying to solve? So the answer here is that by doing this action, we're trying to reduce the implicit biases associated with gender generally, and gender non-binary and transgender people specifically by EPD. And I mean individual police officers as well as the department as a whole through police policy. So why should you care? Well, why should you care? Well, implicit bias forces all of us to make worse decisions. However, when police officers make worse decisions, it can erode community trust. So what can we do about it? We can start with a cheap, fast, and easy fix by changing the policy language. And will that work? Well, there's not enough data available at this point to say conclusively, but some promising research shows that it might help. Similar policy changes aimed at reducing implicit bias have had profound effects in other cities. And we're going to talk about one using an example from the city of Oakland in California. So the problem broadly, what is implicit bias? So implicit bias and bias generally is an adaptive process that allows us to use prior knowledge and experience to inform our decisions and actions in the present. We're hardwired for bias evolutionarily because through the process of natural selection, the folks who didn't eat certain colored berries lived longer, and now that exists in the way that we live and work in the world. So implicit versus explicit bias, there's a little bit of a difference there. If you don't like broccoli or you don't like the color teal, those are some explicit biases that are top of mind for you. Implicit biases are unconscious. Those are part of your subconscious feelings, your perceptions, attitudes, and stereotypes that have developed as a result of prior influences and imprints. So it may sound like right now that we can't do anything about implicit biases, right? Your explicit biases, I guess you could force yourself to eat broccoli if you didn't want to, but that's not entirely correct, because the problem with narrowly setting for that perspective is that it can lead us collectively to care less about the dangers associated with implicit bias instead of caring about it more. So let's concentrate on the dangers, especially when we're forced to make quick decisions using subjective criteria. The potential for bias is great. I just want to make sure that y'all can still see the screen, or has it gone all wonky right now?
It's gone wonky.
Okay, so I'm not gonna read the study specifically, but I did want to say that there's some dangers, especially during close calls. So there's an economist that did research between 2004 and 2008 using hundreds of thousands of pitches. And he found during Major League ball games, and I know that Major League Baseball is a poor analogy for the types of close calls that happen in policing situations that it can involve life and death, but the psychological processes are very similar. So umpires were found when they were making close calls, game-winning calls, that umpires that were of the same race as the pitcher were more likely to call strikes for game-winning calls, and they were less likely to call strikes if they were of a different race than the pitcher. However, that implicit bias, that implicit racial bias, was nulled or diminished severely when those umpires at those games during those game-winning calls between 2004 and 2008 had some sort of instant replay that was available during the game. When the umpires knew that existed, they took more time, thought through, and it was found to actually reduce implicit biases. And so that's just one example that exists where we can use some tools and techniques, and in this case, I'm advocating for policy to reduce implicit bias associated with gender specifically. So that's what our specific problem is, that the lack of gender inclusive and diverse language and police policy can lead to greater implicit bias among EPD officers. And persons experiencing explicit and implicit bias because of their sex, gender, and gender identity certainly exist, and they certainly exist everywhere, including from individual police officers and through police departments through police policy. So language itself shapes our cultural and social attitudes, and using gender inclusive language is a powerful way to promote gender equity and reduce gender bias. When the chief earlier talked about hiring, a lot of companies around the world now use language that's more gender inclusive as a way to hire the best talent. because we know that as gender evolves and our conception of it evolves, we need to upgrade our hiring practices in order to make sure that we can get the best people as well. So this is particularly true of transgender people. People who are transgender face a series of systemic barriers preventing them access to legal protections, healthcare, and identity documents, while they simultaneously disproportionately experience violence, harassment, and discrimination. Transgender people of color face even higher barriers. So while statistics vary depending on the source, transgender people are disproportionately the majority of victims of hate violence, homicide, and are more likely to experience police violence and physical violence from law enforcement. And transgender people of color are even more likely to experience police violence generally. So I wanted to kind of zoom out now from the problem specifically to some solutions generally. So nationally, 21st century policing through the President Obama's task force final report gives some great guidance on how we might be able to use gender inclusive and gender diverse language in police policy. So Pillar 2, policy and oversight, states that law enforcement should have clear and comprehensive policies on gender identification. Recommendation 2.13 states that law enforcement agencies should adopt and enforce policies prohibiting profiling and discrimination based on race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, age, gender, gender identity, and gender expression, as well as sexual orientation, immigration status, disability, housing status, occupation, and language fluency. Andra Ritchie, a police misconduct attorney who contributed to the report, notes that gender and sexuality specific forms of racial profiling and discriminatory policing include failure to respect individuals' gender identity and expression when addressing members of the public and during arrest proceedings, searches, and placements into police custody. So we kind of talked about nationally what some best practices are, and I wanted to pivot to what a potential solution might be. And I wanted to start with Dr. Jennifer Ebhart. She's one of the leading social psychologists based out of Stanford on the work of bias. And I wanted to talk really about her experience failing, doing the research, some of the best and leading science, and thinking that there were some ways to solve the problem of implicit bias in police departments and how we can learn from her mistakes. So like I mentioned, she's a social psychologist at Stanford who studies bias. She's gotten MacArthur Genius grants and she's totally renowned in her field. Initially, she tried to reduce implicit bias through trainings at police departments. She went to police departments and informed them about how implicit bias works, and it didn't make a difference. And in fact, some of the latest and greatest research and bleeding edge science shows that it can actually make things worse. When you do implicit bias trainings, in some cases, it makes people less likely to empathize with persons who are victim of implicit bias because they too think that, oh, there's nothing I can do about it. So like I said, it isn't very effective and sometimes it can make things worse, including in police departments. And eventually she started working within departments, finding that by changing policy, you can reduce some negative outcomes produced by implicit bias. And so I wanted to talk about effectiveness. So we've talked about the solution of changing police policy. And now I want to talk about how those policy changes can reduce bias. And I wanted to use an example. So the city of Oakland, their police department's foot pursuit policy is one that was adjusted to reduce implicit bias. So officers, once the policy was adjusted, could no longer follow suspects as they ran into backyards or disappeared into blind alleys. Instead, officers were instructed to step back, slow down, call for backup, and think it through. So this policy has not only led to less civilian shootings as a result of foot pursuits, but it's also achieved greater officer wellness. Injuries among officers dropped by 70%, and the number of officer-involved shootings have also fallen dramatically. And that's gone from an average of about 8 per year to about the same number in the past 5 years, even when the arrest rate had held steady and crime levels fell. So I just wanted to use that as an example to illustrate that a small policy change has reduced the potential for bias to influence officers' decision-making. And while we're talking here about not something related to foot pursuit, even those small changes can do the things that we know cause people to pause and reflect and change the way that you think to reduce implicit bias. So I wanted to go just kind of close things off and open it up to discussion around the action that I'm suggesting, that we change the police policy manual wholesale. So all of the police policy instances in which there's use of non-gender inclusive language to include gender inclusive and gender diverse language. So the big idea, again, is changing police policy to include gender inclusive and diverse language can reduce implicit bias. That implicit bias is all the subconscious feelings, perceptions, attitudes, and stereotypes that have developed as a result of prior influences and imprints that person's experiencing, and they have implicit biases because of their sex, gender, and gender identity, including this happens from individual police officers and through police departments, through police policy, especially people who self-identify as transgender. President Obama's final report on 21st century policing advocates for law enforcement agencies that they should adopt and enforce policies that prohibit profiling and discrimination based on gender and gender identity, and that the latest and best science tells us ways how to reduce implicit bias, and that they find that by changing police policy, you can reduce some negative outcomes produced by implicit bias in ways that implicit bias training just cannot do. So other cities such as Oakland have proven that this works, that a small policy change has reduced the potential for bias to influence officers' decision-making. So I know that that's a lot and it's pretty quick, but that's where I wanted to start the conversation. That science tells us that there's mechanisms that we can use to reduce implicit bias. We know that implicit biases have negative outcomes and that we've seen police policy, even small changes, have really dramatic effects. So I wanted to frame the conversation that way and look at opportunities for us to change wholesale, like I said, instead of piecemeal, individually police policy, so that we might see a dramatic effect if we did it all at once versus waiting for opportunities to do it one policy at a time.
I highly recommend as much feedback from anyone on this subject. So who would like to begin? Commissioner Shivers?
Yeah, so I think a key part of doing it wholesale, one of the things that gave me pause when we were initially talking about this is the amount of workload that would fall on our policy sergeant. So I'd love to hear the resources and time that Julie, you've already got promised to various things, and if this is something that could be done and what sort of time frame we could do it in.
Now before I have her, can you respond to that question of Commissioner Winrock? What is your take on the time?
Yeah, I would just say that I don't know, that I'm really interested in what Sergeant Smith says. I mean, so the kind of larger piece document, 20-page document it would make poor bedtime reading, kind of lays out all of the 650 plus instances in which there's use of non-gender inclusive language, male, female, where we can include gender identity and gender expression as protected classes consistent with other city policy. So, to me, mechanically, it's like, oh, all that I have to do is make a motion and then somebody seconds and we vote. But operationally, I think what Commissioner Shivers is getting at is that it might be a little bit more complicated. And so I'm going to have to plead ignorance, Chair, and defer to the sergeant.
Okay. Would you like to address that, Sergeant Smith, or we want to move on to Councilor Ye?
I believe other people have their hands up. I could start to address it. The great news is that I have agreed to do that, and the chief has agreed to do this, and we've already started doing it. So as far as beginning to make the changes in the policies for gender inclusiveness, in fact, 317 and 220 that you read tonight have already been updated in that process. And so that's the great news. And how we go about doing it is, I guess what we're going to further discuss here is that I think you heard the chief talk about some priorities that I have. One is accreditation, House bills and legislative updates to ensure that the language is in the policies. And then I also have approximately 30 policies that are right now in the works to come through that are all going to be scrutinized, identified, and updated for gender inclusiveness. So the work is already being done. And I think that it's important to highlight that I've also looked at policies, and we have approximately 19 policies that are 16 years old or older. And those are the next group that I'm going to be focusing on because I believe that they should be given priority to bring up to speed. And so the reason I kind of outline all those priorities, the work's already being done. I'm updating as we're going along. I anticipate that over the next year, we should probably hit a good portion of the policies, and then I can finish off the rest of the policies that we didn't hit in throughout those priorities. So that's what I'm proposing, the way we do it. I know it's important to me. I'm in agreement that it needs to happen. I love your presentation, Ian. Thank you. And I'm going to let people ask the questions that they have if I didn't answer some of those already.
Sound great. Councilor Ye?
Officer Tester and Commissioner Davis were ahead of me. I think it's hard to see from where you're sitting.
Okay. Officer Tester?
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you for presenting all that, Ian. That was a really well thought out PowerPoint. I had some good research to back that up too. I do caution the use of the foot pursuit policy one, just because there's typically training that goes along with that. Like at EPD, we have the same kind of training to back that up. So it's not just the policy change, but I do think that this would be a huge change for us, and it needs to happen. It's long overdue, quite frankly, as far as making sure that we're inclusive of everybody. And it also helps officers when we're reading policies that we have to adhere to. It's retraining our brain. And I love that idea because it's way overdue. So thank you.
And just so I'm crystal clear, you were using that as an example, that foot pursuit. That was not something, we're not changing the foot pursuit. You're talking about language.
Right. So with the foot pursuit research, it's not just the change in the policy language. It's likely that in Oakland that they also had a training to actually reframe their framework. So to slow down around a corner, much like EPD has had. I don't know if we've had the policy change for foot pursuits, but the training is also initiated with it. So with implicit bias, where it's kind of backwards, because I agree, when you're training implicit bias, it can have that negative effect. And that's what we just don't want. So I do like where we're going with starting with changing our policy language, so that when officers are reading it, we're training ourselves through that process versus something more formal.
Councilor Ye?
Maisie is ahead of me.
Oh, okay. I don't see her hand. So this is a glasses problem because I don't only see one hand up right now, and that's you. So if there is a hand up in her corner, you know what? It is a hand in her corner. I see it. Commissioner Davis, go ahead.
I just second what Naivash said about this being a really well thought out PowerPoint, and I thank you, Ian, for doing all of the work around this to inform us of the implicit bias component, and I agree with everything that you said.
That's great. Okay, Councilor Ye.
Thanks. It will be so nice when we're all meeting in person. I want to agree with what folks have said. I also think it's well overdue. This is really not a new issue. We're just a little behind here in Eugene. And I think there's a lot of value. I like Ian's idea that doing it all at once really makes a statement of our commitment and how seriously we're taking this. But and I understand the time constraints. So I'm wondering if we can't leverage some of our community partners to help us with this work. I know Transponder does education and consultation. I mean, it's money, and that's, you know, an issue that might have to be taken up, but having some help going through the language and identifying problems might make this go a little faster than relying on just one person who has a lot on her plate already. I don't know if that's a viable option, but we can't always do all this work alone, and looking for, those opportunities can sometimes be what we need.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Robertson?
Yeah, I was just going to second everyone and say thank you, Ian. I think this also speaks volumes to building trust in the community, which is one of my main focuses. And if, the police are the first people there, if they're using gender inclusive language, and other people start to use it. So I think it's a really great starting point, and something that the police can do now to help build trust.
Thank you. Well said. Well, very well said. Commissioner Shivers? I can't hear you.
Sergeant Smith was before me. I wanted to make a motion, so. Okay.
Sergeant Smith, and hold off for that, because I want to give any more questions before we do any motions. So Sergeant Smith.
So I just want to touch base on Councillor Ye's comment about lobbying community to assist me. The great news is not only have we already started doing this work, but I have a volunteer that is coming in and already started helping me do this. And so we are lobbying the community to come in and help. And so she is helping me, and the 30 policies that we're currently doing right now, she is going through and making those changes. And then, I'm able to review, we're able to send it back out for revision. So anyway, I don't know if that helps, but we're working through it. As far as workload, there's also a mechanism of how we update these policies. So once the revision and updates are made, they're sent out for review and for other individuals and groups and divisions, like police commission, human rights commissions. But then once that comes through, there's a mechanism for it to be adopted and signed off by the chief, and then sent out for review for the employees. And so, for example, knowing that I have 30 policies that I have currently working in the hopper, sitting down and talking with the chief, realizing that that's an impact on him, that he has to go through and review and then sign. And so there's things that happen. I mean, other portions of the process that are not seen that would be very impactful to not only single employees, but also the entire department, who then has to review all the policies. And so we really want to be cognizant of what we're doing to impact our employees who already have a heavy workload. I want them to value the policies as they come out, review them and absorb that knowledge, and not just click the button through and not really read things. So it's another, another thought for us to think about. The other is that as we go through and update and reviewing for content, not just for gender inclusion, but content of, do we need to make a changes to currently things that are happening in our community? A policy 20 years ago is really not going to be reflective of our current community makeup, perhaps. And so my fear of just going through and changing all the gender inclusion would then make it hard for me to track on the updates when I'm analyzing the data for updates and what policies need to be prioritized. It's gonna make it a little bit harder for me. So I just wanted to throw those things out there.
But my question would be, the policies that we are reviewing, that could happen maybe as we're doing it, it could go through there. So because the last thing we want to do is change something and date it when we haven't even gone over the policy ourselves. Is that correct?
Correct.
Commissioner Winrock, and then next will be Commissioner Shivers.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks so much for the really productive feedback and conversation. It's great to hear folks' impressions and thoughts and lived experience too. I just wanted to say that I consulted with Marty Wilder, who is a member of Transponder in the generation of kind of my research, and they were also a member of the ad hoc committee on police policy. So I wanted to do kind of a gut check of, hey, you know, this individual is not representative of the entirety of the organization of Transponder, but I did want to have a deeper sense too of what their priorities were and how they viewed the work. And that was really helpful for me to just have a sense of what is one individual's perspective, who's also a member of an organization that's strongly advocating for this in our community. And I think that I'm interested to hear Commissioner Shiver's motion, because yeah, I feel that we can strike a balance that takes into consideration the positive changes that a really sweeping set of changes to the police policy manual this could achieve, build community trust, while at the same time recognize that I want to have a positive working relationship with Sgt Smith, so I don't want to like dump on you on day one. But yeah, I'm gonna defer to Commissioner Shivers, because I think that he might have an elegant solution that balances all these things. If not, I'm putting a lot on you. So,
Commissioner Shivers.
Yeah, so I'm very open to friendly amendments because I haven't completely thought through. But the motion that I'm hoping to make is that this comprehensive review, be completed by 2023, the same time. You said it might take a little bit more than a year. I want to keep it fast, and I think that'll give time for these necessary folks, while also giving us a deadline to achieve. And this group as a whole is going to be together for a while. So, you know, I want to make sure we complete this before, you know, we change horses. So yes, motion to recommend that this work be completed by October 2023.
And do we have a second?
I don't know if you could see Chair, but Amanda, Commissioner McCluskey had their hand up.
Oh, I had a question, but I can wait until after.
Okay, Commissioner V, I see your hand up.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, my question is probably towards Commissioner Shivers. So your motion, I'm wondering, is you had a timeline set, and we're doing basically a lump sum of all the policy, updating it. And I'm seeing Commissioner Winrock nodding, so I'm guessing he agrees to that. Once it's already revised and it's done, do we bring all the policy back for us to look through, Sherman box, and for us to approve each one of the policies one by one, or what do we do?
From the way I understand it, that all the language in all the policies would have gender inclusive and diverse language. This is, I believe, a recommendation, because at the end of the day, the police chief is going to have to determine if that's going to happen. We have just been told by Sgt Smith that they're in the middle of doing it right now anyway. All we're doing is saying we want it speedy. It's a recommendation because it hasn't been done in many, many years. So I like to get things done. So if by having a year or so date to get this project done, I believe that is in line with what I've been hearing. Councilor Ye said, maybe we should look at help. Sgt Smith said she has help. And if we need more help, I believe between Councilor Ye and Sgt Smith, we can get pretty creative what we do. Now, all we're doing is trying to give it a little bit of a timeline, that we just don't say, we do one policy and then it's forever. And then, then we're waiting for our grandchildren to work on the next policy. We're trying to get this thing done in a time frame. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at that. So I'm comfortable. All I'm looking for is this. We have a motion. Is there any commissioner here who would like to second the motion of what that presentation was about and the timetable?
I'll second it.
Thank you. So we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. All right. And thank you so much.
Chair, I think Commissioner McCluskey had a question or some.
Excuse me, Amanda, please.
Yeah, sorry, I was a little delayed on getting my hand up, but yeah, I did have a question. I was just curious, and forgive me, Ian, if you said this, but the gender inclusive language, like what specifically does that look like?
Yeah, and this is a great piece too. If you're a fan of reading the musings of where does this language exist, I encourage you to go to page 15 of the packet, and it goes through the process that I used. So I reviewed the entirety of the policy manual and defined use of gendered language. I downloaded the PDF of the policy manual and then used the Control F function on my computer to review for the following kind of non-inclusive gendered language: she, her, hers, herself, he, his, him, himself, or himself rather, female, male. And in order to find opportunities to include sex, gender, and gender identity as a protected class, I reviewed specific policy that related to discrimination. And so below that, I detail the number of instances or times that gender non-inclusive language is referenced. A single instance is one use of gender non-inclusive language, such as she, as opposed to the gender inclusive pronoun they. And so after reviewing the policy manual, I found 633 instances of the use of non-inclusive gendered language. I detailed that before, he, his, she, hers, and then 9 instances of the use of female, male, instead of something like person, and then 2 instances of opportunities to include sex, gender, and gender identity as a protected class. And then below page 15 of the packet, it just kind of goes through each of the policies and where those 640 plus instances pop up and where.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. Okay, we're gonna move on. I'm gonna be overseeing the outreach report, and I'm going to begin with myself. And for those, as we talked about at the last meeting, what I'm looking for in the outreach report are those things that you did as a commissioner this past month that you would like to share. Now, if nothing happened, I'm not saying create something. I'm just saying if you have something to share, share. You're not pressed to share anything other than something that you feel that the other commissioners could hear or learn about. So mine, this past, I reached out and had an opportunity to have a lunch introduction, get to know president of the Eugene Police Employee Association. His name is Michael Clues. So I got a chance to meet him, and we got to talk and got to learn just from his perspective, what's going on? What's going on with the force? And he got to learn a little bit about me. Why am I doing this? What caused you to do that? The more engagements that we have, I believe, as commissioners with police officers all over the map, it only strengthens your knowledge as far as the type of issues that we're coming across. And I gained a lot from that 2-hour lunch that we had. And then the next part of outreach, the commitment from the police department to assist in our, not mine, our campaign raising money for the American Cancer Society of Lane County, which, so you know, has raised over $11,200 and something for Lane County. And the group of 14 men who are involved in this are at $98,000. And we're not necessarily at the halfway point with a goal of $150,000, which during the COVID and during all this time would be the highest amount of money raised for Lane County ever for breast cancer awareness and research. So applaud yourselves, because when I speak about what's going on, I'm using this commission as my backdrop. So good job there. So that is what I've been doing this past month, is raising money and meeting police people when I get an opportunity to make put everything that we're doing here in perspective. So next will be, I'm going to start off with one I know is ready to speak, Commissioner Dominguez, because you spoke on some already, but share what you have. I think you're on mute.
I pretty much just said what I needed to say. I'm just in contact with Beatrice, and hopefully we will be doing something together. So we'll have more next time.
And what do you plan on doing with Beatrice?
Well, she already has events that she organizes, and like her work is already outreach with the Spanish-speaking community. Okay. So I don't want to start from scratch. I could start from scratch, but I was thinking, okay, you know what? Maybe I should just do a one-on-one with her and actually see what it is that she's doing, what tactics have been working, especially because, you know, it's like the police. So what is it that she encounters with the Spanish-speaking community? Because I've never been an officer, so I don't really know, you know, like how do people react when it's related to the police? So I think it's better to get like a grounding in that, and then eventually start to move into the other things that I was thinking. I have some ideas about like social media, but I think it's better to get her perspective first because she already does that. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Winrock.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate meeting those two members of Showing Up for Racial Justice for the Eugene Springfield branch. We're going to be hosting them again at the Board of Directors meeting to have a opportunity for additional questions regarding the endorsement of the letter, which recommends that the City of Eugene adopt the recommendations from the ad hoc Committee on Police Policy. I'm also going to be meeting later this month with the policy work group for the University of Oregon on October the 26th. I work at U of O, so I'm part of the police policy work group over there. And if anyone has any questions about U of O police policy, please shoot me a note. Commissioner Dominguez, I'm looking at you. I'd be happy to ask them questions there, talk to them about hiring as well, and looking forward to bringing back any learnings or just ways that we can engage community across departments more effectively.
Okay. Commissioner V.
Hi, thank you. A couple of years ago, there was some concern from neighbors about crimes in the neighborhood where I live. So a few neighbors and I got together and we created a neighborhood watch group that has grown to 57 members. Is the Hawkins Heights and Braywood Hills Neighborhood Watch. So it's still going, and what we do is we created an opportunity for people to post comments about their concerns with safety. If they had spotted some, you know, it could just be a loose dog in the neighborhood, or it could be cars that are speeding by at night at a certain time. So that's pretty interesting information. It's useful. Sadly, I have not been keeping up with it lately, but I need to get back to it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I wasn't expecting to give a report. I thought the vice chair was going to. That was on the agenda.
You were not at the last meeting, and I hope you're feeling better. And this is not it is not from me. I'm not mandating it. Because you didn't know that I was going to be coming at you. I will be coming at you next month, and you have brought up something which you're doing that it sounds like you want to get back involved with. Is that correct?
Yeah, I definitely have kind of skipped, you know, looking at it, because you know you have so much to look at these days on social media. But it's just one of the website that, you know, on Facebook that has been neglected by me. But luckily my partner has been looking at it and responding.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Davis.
I don't have anything currently.
No problem. Commissioner Robertson.
Well, I'm in law school, so I do a lot of reading. So if you guys want to hear about all my reading, I can share that.
If you got something we need to hear, I would definitely love to hear it.
I have been reading a lot about restorative justice practices. So it's really nice and refreshing to hear the chief talk about alternatives to policing and getting help on that front. Just beginning, so kind of diving into that. A shocking statistic I just learned, which I thought I would share, is that 1 in 3 Black men in their life are expected to be incarcerated. That is a crazy statistic to me,
right.
Which just speaks volumes that we need to do something different. And we also need to train our police in a different way. So I was really happy that Ian brought up implicit biases and that things are changing, and it gives me hope for the future. So, but anyway, that's kind of what I'm working on, is family law and restorative justice. So
that's fantastic. Okay, next, and I know you weren't prepared for this, Amanda, but could you tell us, Amanda, a little bit about your replacement for anyone who doesn't know who that person is?
Sure. So let's see. Ibrahim has been on Human Rights Commission longer than I have. I think he's in his 2nd term, and he served as vice chair. He is on our VCU work group. He also was the president of the NAACP. I don't know for how long. He participated in the ad hoc work group. And I think that is all of my knowledge about him. I'm sure he'll be happy to tell you all about himself. Wow,
that's a lot, and that's a lot. Yeah. So it sounds like he brings a lot to the table.
Yeah, he's great. I think he'll be a great fit.
Great. Counselor Ye.
Yeah, thanks. So I don't know that I've done anything specific. I try to mention it when I go places that I'm on the police commission, which often ends up being a conversation about what that is, but it's more casual. I don't keep track of it, which I probably should. But I do, Alan and I make reports back to council. And so I think I've said before, if there's anything specific that people want to make sure is talked about, I'm going to bring back our motion that we just did on the language in our policy and a little bit about our discussion. And I also I'm not sure if they know Sgt Smith has joined us here. I'm not sure, I can't remember now, but I'm going to make sure they know, because everyone's going to be so excited, because everyone I talked to was sad when you retired. And so he's right, he's the smartest chief. So yeah, and if anytime you guys want to make sure that Alan and I don't forget to bring something up, please make sure to tell us, because we are happy to bring forward whatever you guys want to make sure is the council knows, or that the people who watch the council.
Great. All right, so we are going through this meeting, just so y'all know, in record time. We are now entering, and that's on purpose, everyone. That's on purpose. So if we have meetings that need to go, we'll do it. If we can get out of here, we will. So last but not least, we're going to be doing our closing comments. And you might say, I thought I just did the closing comments. No, the last bit we just had was our outreach. And we're talking about what you might want to share with us from what you did the past month as a police commissioner that we could learn something about. And what the subject matter is, it depends on what you bring to the table. Did you have a question, Commissioner Shivers?
I actually didn't get to go over my outreach report, so if it's okay with you, I'll do I'll do outreach report and then jump into public or closing comments and roll it all into one.
And I'm glad it wasn't on purpose.
I know.
I need your help.
Yeah, no worries.
If I were a teacher and I gave out stars, the students that happen to have the stars this month would be Commissioner Dominguez and Commissioner Ian. Now, this is where I need you, because I want to give you a star next month or as soon as we can. And this is, I want to make sure before you tell us about your outreach.
Yeah, so
that for folks, that, map, Commissioner Shivers, you brought to us a map that you went on a walk along with a downtown police, and you gave us this map. And for what I got from what you brought is that map was not the best it could be. Let's start at that.
That is accurate.
So if there's anything that you can do with that map, either involving, getting with Sergeant Greg Magnus, can you do some research and find out what we can do to make that and present it to us as a commission so we all can look at this map? Because I would love to be in a position where we say, we've done our research, we've done our homework, it was a problem. If we do it this way, it's not going to be a problem, and present it, bam, so we have it. Is that something you can handle?
I'm not sure exactly where I would come in on that. For background, when I talked about the sergeant that I had promised to address some of these confusions downtown, that was our fabulous Sergeant Smith. So that has moved on to City Council now. They have made the motion and accepted our recommendation to review the policies. So we all know some of the difficulties that City Council is under when they face these kind of time constraints. So I'm not sure exactly where we can go with that specifically, other than to ask our council liaisons to get to us as they start homogenizing those downtown districts.
Okay, so this, and I'll let Councilor Ye weigh in on this. The last thing I want to see is that truly there's a map that is very inconvenient and a pain for our police officers as far as not knowing what you can do here, not knowing what you can do there, and it's drawn up wrong. And there was a problem under Sergeant Smith, and you brought this up to our attention. I don't want to be in a situation where we're sweeping it to the council only for a year from now that map is still exactly the same. So using all this resource that we have on this screen right here, what is the next step that we do? And please weigh in, Jeremy, if you have to. I'm looking for hands.
So,
Jeremy, did you have something?
So this did go to, council did request this go to Sarah Maderi, or sorry, council did request from Sarah Maderi that proposal be brought back to council on this. There are some players that would definitely need to be involved in this conversation. One of them being the downtown manager, and probably also our lieutenant Salisbury would need to be involved as Greg Magnus's supervisor. I would be happy to check into that with the CMO to see if there's been any progress made. If you were hoping that Sean would meet with with Sergeant Magnus, the lieutenant, and the downtown manager, I would be just to ask where that has gone and perhaps provide an update. I would be happy to arrange such a meeting. However, I would also be glad to just go to the CMO at first. And so it sounds like you're requesting that Sean please coordinate or manage bringing back an update on this. So
100% I'm asking Sean.
Okay.
Sean brought it to our attention, and Sean is going to be in the middle of solving.
Yeah. So then I will work with Sean then to figure out which avenue we need to go. I'll check with the CMO first and see what progress has been made. And then I'll coordinate to have that other meeting made with that downtown team of people that we just discussed.
Okay, so is this anything that we need a motion on?
Well, I see Council is up, and I'm curious pertaining to our conversation.
I would like the commission as a group to make sure we're on the exact same page. Hopefully everyone remembers that we had a map that is a dated map that the police that were downtown really did not like. We're trying to improve the map. And we're trying to improve the map ASAP. Hence, let's find out who all the players are. So all I'm saying is, can we entertain a motion that we research and analyze and change that map?
So Chair Boggs, thanks a lot for continuing on this. I actually have a meeting with the city manager tomorrow early afternoon. So I am happy to bring it up to her and let her know that she will be having folks interested in additional information of how that's going. So she can be ready for you, Jeremy or Sean, when you make that call. Yeah, I don't think we need a motion at this time. The council was pretty clear in understanding why it was coming forward. And I think it was pretty unanimous that, oh yeah, this is kind of a mess and we should see if there's something we can't do about it. It's a little complicated and some of them may not be adjustable, but I think the feeling on council was we need to make this better. It may not end up perfectly everything aligned, but I think the council is with us in understanding the problem. So I think by next month we should be able to bring back an update at least.
Okay, so if we can bring back an update next month, and if Jeremy, if you can get with Sean, with any players, any meetings, and I want to be CC'd as far as an update, as far as where you're at. If we do all this stuff simultaneously, it might be something that hasn't been done in a few years or so. So let's work on this. That's a project. Now, please share with us your outreach.
Yeah. So also, yeah, I don't think we need a motion because you can just delegate this to anybody you like. So for my outreach, since I missed last week, I might go a little bit long on this. My apologies. For those who don't know, I have a leadership position with the Democratic Party of Lane County as well. I do not go there representing the police commission. The most I do while I'm there is say, hey, the next police commission, this thing I'm also involved with, the next meeting is this day and time. And you can bring your concerns there. I can listen to them, and if you have them now, and bring them up in the meetings. Sometimes I'll come in with my opening statement, say, I've heard a lot about this, which I will do tonight with my closing statement. I'm also involved with the Downtown Neighborhood Association. I'm not super involved, but it is a group that I meet with regularly, get emails from even more regularly, meet with once a month. I'm hoping that First Friday Communities of Color comes back in person. I'm really excited for that. That's something that I did before the pandemic that I've missed out on. And I think those are the three main things that I do for outreach and have recently. There's another nonprofit that's a community organization that I've been asked to help out with. It's for beauty pageants, which I know nothing about, but I know about nonprofit boards, so I might be helping out on that level of it. More to come when I get there. And yeah, with that, I'll jump into closing comments.
Okay.
Excellent.
Is there any more questions concerning, are we all on the same page when it comes to these maps or the map? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And sometimes you have to kind of break it down the way I did to really get us on the same page. get that local vote, going. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to get that map fixed. Okay, so closing. We're going to begin with Councilor Ye, closing.
I wrote down really quick, Bonnie, did you send those emails to Jeremy or to us directly? Because I want to make sure I find them in my email, and I did a quick search and I couldn't find them. Do you know? Which emails? You said you sent your report. Did you send it to us all directly or to Jeremy and he's going to send it to us?
Oh, I sent it to Jeremy. I did not know I was supposed to send it to everyone. Sorry.
No. I didn't see it. And so I wanted to make sure I hadn't accidentally deleted it. And that's all I have for closing comments.
Yeah. How does that work, actually? That's a good question. What do I do?
To clarify, are you asking that it be sent out in the mailing to everybody?
Me?
Whomever.
I was just asked to make a report and I was like, here you go. I don't really know who it's, I was just sending it to Dallas because he asked for it. I don't really know if everybody wants to read them.
I would love to see it if that's okay.
Yes, if anyone would love to see the report that she has, just as Councilor Ye just asked, you can send it to her. Please send her. And if there's anyone else that's interested in their report, but what we don't want to do is send out as a standard mass emails. Am I correct, Jeremy?
So it's going to be seen as a public record. So if somebody requests that, we've just created a public record. So if somebody requests that, I can't not allow them to have it.
Okay.
Correct. All right.
Does that answer the question? So that means that any of the commissioners that want to see it can certainly ask for it.
Correct.
But someone else could ask me for it as well.
Correct.
And just to confirm,
as far as I'm hearing, Councilor Ye asked for it.
So Councilor Ye's smiling. Is that not what you were thinking, Councilor?
I don't know if I didn't realize that was a consequence of wanting to see it. And as long as Bonnie's okay with that, I think that's okay. Then great. Because I would love to read it.
That sounds good to me. Okay, so we're going to continue with closing comments. Commissioner Davis. I think you're muted.
Who's going?
It's going.
Oh, me, sorry.
No problem.
I don't have any closing comments except it was nice to see everyone.
And it's very nice to see you as well. Amanda?
Sorry, I took a second time on mute button. I don't really have any closing comments. It's been really fun to work with you all for the last 2 years, and I'm sure that I will see you around at different things. So thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner V?
Just want to thank Amanda McCloskey for the time that she spent here with us. I will miss your presence here and your voice. So I hope that we'll still keep in touch in some way. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Shivers?
Yes. So one of those things that I've heard at some of these community meetings is some real concern about school resource officers and the potential future of police and school interaction. I would very much like to see us get ahead, as ahead as we can on that ball. I don't feel like I feel like we need, in order to do our due diligence, bring this up and address it, because it looks like it's going to be an ugly community event that bleaches all levels of nuance, and I want to make sure we discuss it here.
Okay. Commissioner Dominguez.
It was very nice to meet Officer Smith. And then Amanda, it was really great to talk to you when I did get to talk to you. I really appreciate your presence, just like everybody else is saying. And I'm really excited for you to be part of the CRB. That sounds super fun. So I hope you really enjoy that. I can see why you switched over, just because you get to like see everything that we don't get to see. Anyway, so that's cool. And then the other thing that I was thinking is the reason that I wanted or asked about the Citizens Academy is that I have been playing with the idea of it being kind of more of an outreach thing. And then I have like a list of things of like what it can entail. And yeah, so that's something that I'm thinking about. And hopefully when the chief talks about it next time, maybe I can hop on board and maybe be a little bit more involved with that, if that's even possible. And then I went to the Saturday market the other day accidentally, and I was just thinking, could we be at the Saturday market? That would be interesting. I definitely think that we would get some conversations that might take a little longer. So I don't really know how that would go, but maybe trying that would be interesting to kind of talk to people and kind of say, what's going on with you? And what do you think about the police? And that would be interesting. And then one thing that I didn't comment on earlier today was the IDs and thinking about, I mean, I think that I could just follow up on this, but the visibility and size of the ID is important. So I wonder who's designing this, and if there's a way to make it so that it's actually very clearly the Eugene Police Department. Like, I know that we have officers, but I wouldn't be able to like really differentiate them. Like, I know we were saying that like we should all be able to differentiate the officers, but I still wouldn't be able to. So I'm wondering if there's a way to very clearly do that. Since it is part of the uniforms, I'm wondering if the way that it appears on the uniforms could be made in such a way that it's like, okay, this is definitely a Eugene Police Department person. I don't know if it's just me that's not very observant, but I think that I'd like to follow up on that. And see how that's executed. And I do have a design background, so that's kind of also where I'm like, there are like nuances to this. So that is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Robertson.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome, Julie. It's glad to have you here. I hear nothing but great things about you, so I'm excited you're here. I also just want to say in terms of just the gender inclusiveness stuff, and just like remind everyone that policy takes time, like we all know, to update and to change the verbiage. But if we can in our own lives start using that verbiage and spread the word, Officer Tester, I mean, you're probably the one that's in the mix the most to make that change right now. Because I think times are changing and the police departments are a little bit behind. So just want everybody to keep moving forward, and thanks everybody for your comments tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so last but not least, Commissioner Winrock.
All good. Yeah, with the W last name, I'm used to going last. And just wanted to say thanks so much, Chair, for the opportunity to present tonight. I really appreciated that. Amanda, I'm really going to miss your presence here, but understand that, yeah, you're going to bring so much value to the CRB, and looking forward to working with your replacement. Has big shoes to fill. And yeah, it's just been fun to work outside of the commission with you too. And I hope that our potential partnerships between our organizations don't end, because that's been really fun to get to know you in a different context. It's always a pleasure to see everyone, and I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to meet in person. I'm wearing a mask because I'm now going to grad schools, just like Chantel. And so, yeah, the prospect of meeting together is high in my mind. And Sergeant Smith, I promise, pinky swear that we won't saddle you with years of work every meeting. Certainly, maybe not your first one, but yeah, just again, thrilled to have you here, and welcome back. And I'm super looking forward to working together.
Okay, Sergeant Smith, so only because this is your first meeting, do you have any closing comments? Typically you wouldn't be, but on this first one, I would love to hear your take on your first meeting.
Well, I just want to thank you for all the kind words and the warm welcome that I received from all of you. And I think that I was pleasantly surprised today on how many of you that I've actually met and worked with in person. And for those of you that I haven't worked with yet in person or on any projects, I look forward to those projects that are coming up to be able to do that. So again, I'm very impressed by all of you. I'm impressed about your commitment to your community and what you guys are all doing. So anyway, thank you for the welcome and letting me be a part of your guys' group.
Thank you. So I want to close with, yes, thank you, Amanda, for all that you brought to our table. And obviously we look forward to seeing you in our community. You're a major player in the community. So we know that you'll always be around if we ever need to ask you a question or you want to share or check in and see kind of what we're doing. So it's not goodbyes, you're just doing something else on the other side. That's it. One of the things I wanted to just say is that I felt a certain level of energy in this particular meeting, and it's very much appreciated. This is the people's work. So when we're talking about things like outreach or what is your idea or what's important to you, it is very, very important that you're recognized. There is no bad question. You don't need to be apologizing for anything, because if it's important to you, we can figure out the answers. So with that, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart, and I'll see y'all next month. Can we close this meeting? Thumbs up? Bye-bye. 7:30, I think we did pretty good.
Despite my best efforts to drag it out.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Dallas. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.